Hey Wargamers, this weekend Chapter Approved 2018 went up for pre-orders. That means that we're learning a lot about what's actually in the book from the GW affiliates and from GW itself. So today I want to talk about the point changes to Codex Tau and how that might influence the units that you bring in your list in the near future. So before we do that though, I want to say thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and hit subscribe. That way you don't miss any upcoming content. All right, so like I said, we're learning about what's in the book. We have point changes. There are other huge things like the 8 and, Forge World adjustments, things like that. We'll talk about that in a different video. Today, let's get into basically some of the biggest things in Chapter Approved for Tau, and that is the point changes. So here is a list of everything that changed for Codex Tau. Right off the bat, we have two big changes. Broadsides are down to 35, Crisis down to 27, Ghost Kill down to 70, Devilfish down to 70, Piranhas down to 30, Skyrays down to 80, Gundrones down to 10, Farsight is now at 125, and Shadowsun is now at 110. So some pretty big changes to units there, some larger than others, but overall, point adjustments where we think we would want them. War Gear for advanced targeting systems on the little guys at 6, that's half of its previous cost. Riptide Battlesuits is down to 10, Cyclic Ion Raker is down to 32, Flamers are now 6, Fusion Collider is now 30, High Output Burst Cannon is 16, Ion Accelerator down to 50, that's a pretty big drop, Missile Pod down to 15, Plasma Rifle down to 8, Pulse Driver Cannon down to 50, Quad Ion Turret down to 30, Rail Rifle down to 12, and Railguns down to 30. Alright, barring any changes to the Commander rule, which I haven't heard of yet, I don't have the copy yet, obviously, so I don't know for sure, but assuming there aren't any changes to how Commanders are treated in Chapter Approved, these changes to Farsight and Shadowsun probably aren't going to make a huge difference in how often you see them, although the changes to Shadowsun being much cheaper does help you out, especially when considered within the context of the changes that we're seeing to Broadsides as well. So I think Broadsides and Shadowsun together are probably going to be seen more commonly, but if you're not bringing Broadsides, you're probably not going to bring Shadowsun, at least not any more than you were before. So that change there is, kind of in the middle of the road. Changes to Piranhas, Skyrays, those things are good. Devilfish too, that saves you some points if you're going to be bringing those things. But if you're bringing a Devilfish, that allows you to bring another Fire Warrior with those points, so that helps. Changes to the Piranha are welcome. It was overcosted as it was previously. It's still probably a little bit too expensive for me to consider bringing them, but if you only had points for one Crisis Suit with one gun and 2 Gundrones, this is a better use of those points. It has more durability, it's faster, and so if you were trying to bring just one Crisis Suit, which you can't, but if that's what you wanted to do, the Piranha is a better choice for you. However, if you have enough points to bring multiple Piranhas, you're better off just using those points to buy Crisis Suits at this point. So I don't really see that being a big shift, but again, it does save you points elsewhere if you were planning on bringing Piranhas anyway. Changes to the Skyray, kind of the same deal. It's still not cheap enough that I wouldn't just bring a Hammerhead or something else instead of a Skyray. It's just not there for me yet. And then before I get into the suits, I want to mention that the point change to Gundrones is actually fairly significant. That's a 17% decrease in the point cost for that unit, which means that you can bring a lot more Gundrones than you used to be able to bring. Of course, you're still limited by the rule of 3, and that, particularly with respect to leadership, puts some constraints on how many Gundrones you actually want to bring, but nonetheless, I think that's a nice change that helps out quite a bit. Moving on to Crisis Suits, I think this is a fantastic point change. Basically, going down to 27 points was way cheaper than even the fake leaks had it at, so I'm pretty happy with this change, and it makes Crisis Suits a much more competitive choice overall when you compare it to things like the Riptide. The point drop on plasma rifles, on missile pods, on fusion blasters all add to this and make the Crisis Suit a pretty reliable chassis for a lot of these different weapon systems. In particular, when I first saw this, I thought, yes, plasma rifles are back, and that's kind of true. Plasma rifles are more efficient than they used to be. They still have some relative advantages compared to some other weapons, namely the Cyclic Ion Blaster, but it's still not competitive enough to replace some of the other weapons that you have access to. Missile pods are also kind of in that same boat. They became more efficient, but they don't necessarily have the efficiency advantage over other weapon types. The one thing missile pods do have, of course, is the range. And so if you're planning on bringing crisis suits either before or now, considering the changes to points, missile pods give you that range and synergize fairly well with some other builds. So I could see more missile pod crisis suits also being a thing, but really what I think we're going to see more of is the fusion blaster suit. So 3 fusion blasters on a crisis suit, pretty cheap now. And if we look at the point efficiency of fusion blaster suits compared to something like a heavy burst cannon Riptide, we see that fusion blaster suits are actually much more point efficient offensively in comparison for anything that's like toughness 5 or more. So we're actually getting a really good platform with crisis suits now. Granted, they don't have the range. This calculation was done not assuming half range, so if you actually get closer than 9 inches, you are even that much more efficient, so that's good. But you do have to be close to use the fusion blaster. You don't have to be close to use the heavy burst cannon. So, there is strengths and weaknesses here, but overall, if you're looking for something to take out a target that's high priority, high durability, fusion suits are going to actually have a really nice niche for this. Broadsides are in a similar boat. They got, a basic point decrease on their base cost, but their weapons weren't really affected. The only thing that was affected that, could be considered in that calculation is the fact that some war gear options are now cheaper, primarily the advanced targeting system. And so if we look at the point efficiency of broadsides, whether we're talking about high yield missile pods or heavy rail rifles, they too are more points efficient than Riptides. So this is a nice change. This, really does help bring broadsides back to the forefront. However, they still have the same weaknesses that they did before. Relatively low staying power. They don't have, a built-in invulnerable save or anything like that. They have relatively few wounds, and they are not very mobile. So the fact that you either have to take a target lock or a shield generator on these, or a bunch of shield drones, really kind of pigeonholes them into a certain list type. If you are bringing Shadow Sun, I think that helps a lot. And again, this could be paired with bringing missile pod crisis suits as well. And so you have, this really built up fire base. I think that actually has some nice advantages there. But overall, they still have their same weaknesses that they did before. However, that aside, if we look at the numbers, we see that high-yield missile pods are, universally more points efficient than a Riptide. They're going to be able to do more damage than a heavy burst cannon Riptide at any type of opponent, and so that makes them appealing if you can keep them alive. If we look at the heavy rail rifle, it is more points efficient than a Riptide at taking out high toughness targets, similar to the Fusion Blaster. However, the Fusion Blaster still remains the more point efficient choice, and crisis suits have multiple advantages, including being able to deep strike. And so if we were to rank these different options, it would be fusion suits, then heavy rail rifles, then high yield missile pod, then Riptides in terms of point efficiency at these higher toughness classes. But really that means that if we are looking at these different options all as equally valid, it comes down to what your actual strategy is. So if you're looking to be up close and personal, crisis suits are your choice. If you want something that's going to be on the table for the full game, Riptides are going to be your choice. They're still the most durable option out of these three. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more of a glass cannon, then broadsides are going to be your choice, but they lack mobility that are found in the other two options. So we can consider Riptides, crisis suits, and broadsides as representing different outcomes of kind of a choice triangle where you're balancing firepower, mobility, and durability. Pick two of those three, and that's going to dictate which type of suit you want to bring. If you want mobility and firepower, you're going to go with something like a crisis suit. If you want firepower and durability, you're going to go with a Riptide. And if you just want firepower, you're going to go with the broadside. So, kind of curate your army considering that. But either way, if you're bringing Riptides, crisis suits, or broadsides, you're going to force your opponent to make a choice. They're going to have to choose which one of those units they are going to prioritize, and that's how you gain leverage over your opponent. If you have a situation where you have two units and they have to choose which of those two they're going to focus on, but both units are equally valuable to you, then you get the upper hand because they have to make a choice they have to dedicate to one thing, and you can exploit that choice using the unit that they don't go after. So that's, kind of a basic strategy thing, but overall making your opponent choose, not giving them one obvious pathway forward is a good way to gain leverage over them and win the game overall. So overall, like I said, big changes to Crisis Suits Broadsides, and that impacts how many Riptides we're going to see, but overall I'm very happy. I think we're going to see more Crisis Suits, more Broadsides, still going to see Riptides, but they're probably not going to be as prevalent as they have been in the past. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and of course, happy wargaming. Hey everyone, this video is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there as well. Special thanks to No Excuses Panda, Scott Heater, Tao Oswald, Nick Steele, Jared Egler, Scott J. Smith, Stephen Cohen, Brian Mann, Jake Johnson, Eric Jackson, Benjamin, RP, Julian Peck, Andy M. Young, Peter Benjamin Parker, and Giovanni DiMaggio.